We back and we back. Zeus P, Tank Juice. Let the light in, man. It's the 2-hour lunch break, dog. I'm locked in. So turn your speakers up a notch and grab the white gin. And when I'm on the road to the office or the crib, it's Big Zeus, St. Jude, the ones I wanna hear. This is that 2-hour lunch break live from Lady Bird J. Late.
Coming to you live, putting on for the city.
This is that 2-hour lunch break live from Lady Bird J. Late.
And it's coming home to Texas. It's coming home all the way to Austin, Texas, baby.
All right, man, we are back with another edition of Season 5 of the 2-Hour Lunch Break Podcast, a podcast for Austin, from Austin. We're back at home base, Dollar Studios, East Austin, Texas. I'm Trotwood Zeus, one half of the 2-Hour Lunch Break Podcast, and my co-host is out today, but he'll be back at our next recording. And we got a special guest in the building today. Now, normally, we say special. We really mean special this go around, right? And with that said, she is the executive director of Six Square, Austin's Black Cultural District. She's a passionate leader and advocate for preserving and celebrating the rich cultural heritage of our community. She holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from Texas A&M University and a master's in human services from St. Edward's University. Her diverse educational background, combined with her extensive experience, makes her a powerhouse in the realms of community development, cultural preservation, and nonprofit leadership. Beyond her professional achievements, she's also an accomplished author. Her book, The Lesson of Bliss, guides readers on a path of self-reflection and healing, further showcasing her dedication to helping others grow and thrive. Today, we'll be diving into her journey, her work with Six Square, and her vision for the future of Black Austin. We got Miss Pamela Benson Owens in the building. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Good. We're glad to have you. I know we were talking earlier. You are a woman of many talents. You got a lot of pots on the stove. So we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us. So let's go ahead and get to it. Let's dig into your background, right? Okay. So I know off air we were talking about that. You are Austinite born and raised. So let's talk about that experience growing up in Austin, being raised in Austin, and how has that shaped your perspective on community and activism?
So if you've been in Austin any amount of time, you realize it's changed a lot. Mm-hmm. So when I think about growing up here, and I think about what the differences are, back in the day, there was a communal underpinning. So you knew everybody
exactly.
In the community, you knew everybody in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Everybody had a jurisdiction to be able to, discipline you, mm-hmm. tell you what's what. Some of those same lessons, those people are still on the earth.
Right.
And sometimes I look at them, I'm like, I remember that lesson. Mm-hmm. And I think that at the end of the day, the way that it really shaped me is to realize that then there was an intergenerational kind of framework that was for us by us, right? And so we didn't depend on a lot of other people outside of us to do things, right. And it worked. That doesn't mean there wasn't a lot going on about like what we did not have, what we were denied, and the systemic issues, but there was a underpinning of for us by us, and we got it done. And out of the East Side came legends, HT graduates, lots of educators, lots of healthcare professionals, lots of technology executives. People just don't know that part of the history, right. Because it's been fractured over time as people kind of sit in the new.
Got it. So I'm curious. I know we were talking about the breadth of talent that has come out of Austin, come out of the East Side. I know they've done a lot of great things in the community, right? So with that said, share any pivotal moments that you've had, in your youth, growing up in Austin, that, kind of inspired that path toward like activism and, community service.
I've been asked that a lot. And so over time, I had to really reflect on that because you know how you wake up one day, you're a certain age, you're like, how did I even get here? So I've really given that a lot of thought. Okay. And I was trying to figure out a time in our family, my brother and I growing up, where we were not involved in something community service oriented. And so now I realize you grow up and you start asking questions. And so part of just the formula of our family was we were going to be involved in the community. And that meant that we weren't just going to be spectators, we were going to be in it. So there were many times when we would be, handing out food, or we would be giving out clothing or backpacks, or we were making sure, and that just became so normalized for us. I didn't even realize at the time it was like, that's community service. And then I watched my parents, I watched my father lead a variety of nonprofits as their board chair. I remember sitting in the back of the room when he would be at Urban League meetings and just like listening out of the side of my ear, and they'd be talking about like, how do we get our voice heard, and how do we need to mobilize, and how we would be at Downs Field, and like in those stands is where people were trying to figure out how they were going to get stuff done, or in the basement of the church after service, people were figuring out how to get things done. So I don't know if I can name one thing. I do remember sitting at an Urban League dinner, and I remember that night my brother was gone and there was nobody to watch me, and I go to this dinner with my father and my mom, and my dad says, "Hey, I want you to meet this person that's on the board with me." And I look up, and it's this woman with this white hair.
Okay.
And she goes, "Hi, I'm Ann Richards."
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I just remember, like, I didn't, right? She went on to mentor me, and, I ended up, really learning a lot from her. But that came from, at the time he was the board chair, she sat on the board, they were at this dinner. I got there by mistake. But when I look back on what I observed in rooms about, like, how to get things done, I just think my parents normalized it. We never did anything without a community, like, let me help you remember where you came from, and it is your duty and responsibility to never forget.
Gotcha. So I'm curious. I know you said you had a bit of a de facto mentor-mentee relationship with Ann Richards. Talk about that experience. What was that like?
Absolutely wild. And so I got to meet her. She became a mentor, and she started suggesting things like, there's this thing called Girl State where you go and learn about government.
Gotcha.
And you should go. And so I went. I was like 14. And then she's like, you need to run for an office. And I was like, well, what do you think it should be? Police officer.
Okay.
I was like, okay. Or police chief. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then what was so weird about it, went off to college, came back, and one of my first contract gigs was to work for an organization called the Foundation for Women's Resources. I get there, she's on the board. So then in my adult life, young career, she was on the board. And I remember just sitting in hotel rooms talking to her about politics and whatever. What a weird experience. She was super direct. And I remember one day saying to her, she's like, well, what are you going to end up doing? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have to be rich. And she's like, what did you say? She's like, why not? What made you say that? Why don't you want to be resourced? You don't think you're worth being resourced? And it changed my whole relationship with money.
Okay.
As a tool to access. And so then from that sprung into more community service work, more community leadership work, then fundraising. So I look back on that. What a weird vessel to come in contact with, but pivotal in my understanding of what money does and how we all deserve access to it, and we are all worth, being paid for our talents. So, yeah.
Wow, that's a really interesting relationship. That I never would have made that, connection.
Wild. When she passed away, my husband and I sang in the choir at her funeral. Like, wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Weird.
Real. Okay. So kind of taking a step back to where we were at before. I know off air, we were talking about, growing up in Austin, seeing a lot of changes in the city, even, for, myself as well. There's been a lot of changes even since, the late 90s, early 2000s, even then. Now, with that said, how do you see Austin's cultural landscape evolving, particularly when it comes to, our Black and brown communities? And what role do you think organizations like Six Square play in that evolution?
I love that question. So what I will say is, I don't know if this answer is about what really is happening or what has now been exposed over time. So my take is, there has always been immense talent, like just ridiculous, like just off the chart talent in the Black and brown community in Austin. I think that's always been there.
True.
I really do.
Yes.
I think we did a poor job in my time coming up of acknowledging it. And I think we lived in a time where people would sell like just come do this and you'll get exposure. And we kind of created this space where you didn't get almost respected, paid, or revered for your talent in younger generations. So I think the talent was there. What I think has evolved is the talent, you can't even escape it now, right? There's so much talent. People are creating, like you're like creating podcasts and doing amazing things, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. We forget those careers behind the camera that make it work, right? And so I think what's evolved is like it's more prominent. I think people are becoming more aware of it. I think the gap becomes, how do we respect the talent? How do we uplift the talent? For those of us in my generation, how do we get out of your way? How do we trust you in a way that says, here it is, go do it. We're gonna remove the obstacle, go do it. So for Six Square, the last several years has been spent no longer trying to do programming directly, like the art show, whatever, recognizing the talent and putting our energy, our time, and our expertise around removing obstacles so the talented can come forward. It's hard to create when you're hungry.
True. Yes, it is.
It's hard to produce when you don't know how it's going to be paid for. It's hard to write a song when you only have a limited amount of time in the studio because you worked all month to just pay for that amount of time. And I think we have a really bad habit in this city of thinking if we buy a ticket to a show, it does something. It essentially really doesn't. Because when I think about that, I'm like, do they have medical insurance? Do they have health care? Are they able to have affordable housing? Do they have to do a bunch of side hustles to be able to do their craft? If that's the case, then Six Square isn't doing its job. And so that's what we've been trying to close in on. It's like, what does Six Square do? Well, Cultural Arts District should not be in competition with other artists, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We should be preserving the culture, and we should be removing obstacles for the culture to emerge and get out of the way.
Got it. Okay, amazing. So I'm curious, right? So Six Square is the first Black cultural district in Texas, right? So for people that don't know, what is the history behind Six Square?
So the history is there's our founder, and there was a group of founders, but the woman that really brought it forward, her name was Lisa Bird. And she looked and realized, she's like, we need to be more formalized in the way that we onboard culture and how we talk about culture and how we preserve it. Of course, as you probably know, part of the history is around the 1928 plan and the idea that we were promised a certain area of town where we would live and get all the other amenities that were grocery stores and whatever. Well, of course, when that happened, you already know the story, we didn't get all that. And so Six Square was named after the 6 square miles that the Negro district was birthed and where we were allowed to live. So that's the naming of it. And in that came truly all of the things that we were able to bring forward in that space. The theaters, the Chitlin Circuit, Negro League, baseball, right, museum, all of those things came out of that period. And so there was a real need to make sure that that did not get lost in the sauce. And we're now kind of in our second wave of gentrification, maybe our third. And so the fight to do that has become even harder because now we have a lot of people who are not from here. Glad you're here, thanks, come on. And history didn't start when you woke up.
Exactly, there we go.
Right, there's a whole history. So, people are like, how are you fighting gentrification? I'm like, wake up every day trying to figure out how to preserve it. Can't fight. I drive all the time and find new things pop up every week on the east side, every week in the district. So it becomes, okay, so that used to be, a body shop and now it's a coffee shop. Walking in and having the courage to say, do you know where you're standing?
Got it.
And in what ways could we preserve that in a way that teaches people this is like sacred, like this whole area for us is sacred ground.
Sacred ground.
Respect it. So there is that, I laugh all the time about, how I've had to cringe and watch people walk their dogs on the lawn of the Carver. They're like, who's that lady yelling at it's me. It's me going, I'm sorry, could you, what are you doing?
Right.
And trying to do that in a teachable moment way. But sometimes, the activism piece around like, what are you doing takes hold. And so there's just a commitment for us at Six Square to get out of the way. I mean, I'm even thinking now about, am I the leader for this next half? Like, who are we cultivating coming under us that's going to take it and make it better?
Got it. Okay, so I know Six Square is responsible for a lot of different initiatives around not even just East Austin, but Austin as a whole. I know it's even migrated into other cities in Texas, right? So with that said, talk about some of the some challenging yet like rewarding initiatives that you spearheaded with Six Square so far.
So they're all challenging.
Okay,
just level set.
I get that.
But worth it. But worth it.
Okay.
So one of the ways, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that when we got to COVID, I was so concerned. So the thing that always comes up is like we're a dwindling population. Black people are dwindling, and it's because we are in one of the most expensive cities. If you're creative, it's just really hard to make it here. And so when we got to COVID, we had the opportunity to give away micro grants where we didn't really ask a lot of questions. It was like, what's the criteria? You're black, got it.
Okay.
You're creative, got it. And we're gonna pay your rent. We're gonna provide the money for your insurance or your insulin.
Oh, wow.
We're gonna provide mental health services. And so I'm most proud of that because people were like, why are y'all doing that? I'm like, because if we are going to do it, it's about the holistic approach. Right? It's not about just funding your art show. It's can you survive? And surprisingly, what would it look like if you were thriving? So I really feel good about that initiative. The other pieces that people don't realize is that we really surface our pillars around education and preservation. We look a lot at advocacy. We think a lot about what are we doing for the children. And so we've had several initiatives. One of them is Reggie's Rap Room, which is one of my favorite projects, which is a show that addresses social emotional learning and mental health.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Critical.
Yeah.
And so we've done support around that. Origin Studio House has done a major program, and we've supported them because they're lifting something that's important as a hub and a co-working space and a place for us to gather. You start talking about gentrification, spaces to gather has been really difficult. So really proud of that. Most recently, I mean, we've had a lot along the way, but most recently, we collaborated with the Tehamos Foundation and brought Angela Davis here and did a whole project with her. And so instead of her being an Uber, me and Micah Jordan from the Paramount were her Uber all day.
Okay.
Transformational.
Okay.
Y'all didn't see anything. The talks in the car, transformational.
Got it.
So we partnered on that project, and we partnered with the Long Center on Ta-Nehisi Coates a couple years ago. We just recently, in the last couple weeks, partnered with Chris Spivey and Company, which is a gospel choir that started a year ago, and we spearheaded and supported their album.
Okay.
And so we did a live recording a couple weeks ago, and that was great. So in the East Side, there's a lot of churches that have done work, and one of the things we haven't worked on a lot is like, how do we bring that into the fold of culture, and how are we doing that? And so we found that to be a way to really infiltrate ourselves into that community, and that was fabulous. So we're always looking at what are the projects we need to invest in, and the bottom line is there's never enough money. There's never enough money.
I hear that, especially in this economy.
There's just never enough. Like I've got 6 or 7 projects right now on my desk. I'm like, all these are great. What are we gonna do?
Right, how's it gonna get paid for?
Yep, we're always looking for that.
Got it. Okay, so I did have a question, right? So I know, being an Austin native, you have an awareness of what Austin was and kind of what it's turned into, right? So with that said, there's a generation, when you think about Gen Z, when you think about even the ones that are younger than them, Generation Alpha, they've grown up in a kind of, I think for the lack of a better term, like post-gentrification Austin, right? And they may not have that awareness of the cultural richness of the East Side, the Juneteenth, on Rosewood, like we were talking about earlier, all those different things. Now with that said, how does Six Square successfully engage the younger generation in preserving and celebrating, East Austin's Black history?
Oh my gosh, that's the $1 million question.
Okay.
Which is why I'm always talking about like who's the next leader to come, because it's really important to stay in touch. So I will say to you, there's an organization, E4 Youth, who Six Square has been investing in for some time. And the reason why I think this is such a critical organization is because they kind of do all the things. So they use innovation in technology, but they train youth to be able to, operate in the digital space and do digital docent work and tell history. So those projects have been amazing. We did a project a couple of years ago called What Once Was. And we talked about, before that space was there, it was a theater, and they really used technology to tell the story. And so that's one way that we've definitely engaged. But the other part is, I think there's just become a lost art to storytelling. And I think there's such opportunities. We did a oral history project with Forklift around just the Negro League and the Baseball League, and we did that project a couple years ago. But I will say this to you, that what we have to do is get quiet and listen to our youth about how they want to engage, and then do that. So I think part of the thing is like, you need to sit down and listen to this. That's not going to get it. Versus, how would you best like to engage? Like, what about this is interesting to you? And then really meeting them where they are, and kind of transforming the storytelling space. Because I don't want those stories to get lost, but I think there's room to be done on like, how do we hear their stories first?
Got it.
Right?
So kind of meeting them halfway.
Yeah, instead of that like war story. Let me tell you how it was. I walked 2 miles down. They're like, whatever. They're like, whatever. And so I think it's that. And I think it's not minimizing that, not that just everybody has a story, but they have a story. And maybe we need to stop and listen to their story first. Jump On It, who's been around forever.
Ooh,
Nook.
Jump On It, yeah.
Remember Jump On It?
Oh,
okay, been around forever. It's like an institution, right? So when you say Jump On It, people are like, what's that? I'm like, what? Nook's still going. They're still going. Like they did a week of programming, and it was phenomenal. And they did like, academic talks at HT, and they did the traditional festival. They did music artists. They're doing it, and we forget sometimes that those have been doing it along. We think, oh, we don't have to worry about them. We do. We want them to be here 7 generations from now. And so we need to tell the story about like that. We're at a point now where kids have, we have children. So our children should know that we used to, right? So it's that. And so there's, I don't know if Six Square has fully figured it out, but we are clear on the fact that it's not even about us. It's like who's coming behind us and around us, and how can we encourage and inspire them to want to know.
Got it. Okay. So I know Six Square has done a lot of work, done a lot of initiatives in the city. And so with those initiatives, I know you've gotten a chance to gain a lot of historical knowledge, cultural knowledge about, Black East Austin. I mean, I'm sure you already had a lot to begin with, but it's been, you've gained a lot more since then. So with that said, what are some unique cultural elements of East Austin that like you're most passionate about preserving?
Oh my gosh, all of it. No, let me say this. And this is going to sound wild, but here is where I think that we are almost about to have a mess. Bethany, there are cemeteries on the east side. Where our ancestors rest.
Yep.
And I have been fascinated about how easy that can be forgotten. So I worry. So that we've done some work and supported Bethany Cemetery. I don't know if when you talk about what I'm passionate about preserving what's left. Because I wake up every day and somebody else has bought a building and turned it into something. Like I'm passionate about preserving all that's left and what remains. A. B. We need to buy back our own buildings. We need to own it. I become very sensitive about the people who are writing over our murals. Almost ready to whoop somebody's, like I'm close to violent on that. Because I'm like, why? Why? So I'm definitely passionate about that. I think HT gets overlooked. It's the first institution of higher learning, contrary to what people believe. It is not University of Texas.
There we go.
Let's get that straight. And people don't even, like I sit in rooms all the time on the west side of 35, and people don't know an HBCU is in this city. So I find that to be concerning when people are like, I went to UT and I didn't know it was here. Like, really?
It's less than 5 miles away.
Not even, like 3.2.
Right.
3.2.
Right.
And so I am passionate about that. I also think we underestimate the power are the places where we've gotten to break bread.
Okay.
And Hoover's came in a not when I was growing up, but came after. And people don't ever stop to think what COVID might have done to a Hoover's or a Fowler's or right, like
Or even Rollins. Yeah.
Right? So how have we really looked up? Like, we are quick to go to the Chipotle,
Right.
and we are quick to go, right? But how are we making sure that we are making a little extra effort to pour our dollars into us? And so we did a whole project with the cleanup on Downsfield. I talked for years, why are these bathrooms messed up and why are they wet? Like, why?
Okay.
Why is it flooded and why is it not fixed? Like, so those pieces become important, and it might seem like a little thing, but little adds up to a lot. And how are we checking in on when was the last time these streets were paved? How are we, and so it's those things. And why is it that the Quickie Pick never has people that look like us?
Quickie Pick.
Wouldn't even, like, why is this taco $13? No shade on the Quickie Pick.
True.
But, like, I'm just saying, like, there was what are we doing? And so I have to really calibrate my energy.
Okay.
Because you just burn out.
I bet,
and you wake up every day feeling like you have to prove and tell the story and get people to take ownership of these places. And so that, Rosewood, like, that should be an outside, living room. And it should be taken care of well. We shouldn't even have to talk about it. And so that becomes, when I see how other park areas get crazy money poured into them, like, truly, it's just, it becomes really important for us, and specifically Black and brown people. It's easy to be sedated by survival. But that's how we look up and we don't own anything anymore.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit, right? And so let's talk about the fact that I mentioned earlier, you're an author. Right, so I know you have your book, the Lesson of Lists.
Yep.
Right, so in the Lesson of Lists, you emphasize self-reflection and healing. Right, now with that said, how has creating these lists helped you personally in your journey, especially in your role as a community leader?
It's a great question. That the onboarding of that book was hard. I wrote that book. Was supposed to have written that book before, while my father was on the earth. He died, and so I did not get a chance to publish that before he passed, 22. And the core of that book is around the fact that when I was growing up, my father always wrote lists on an index card and put it in his front pocket. And on that list could be anything from some good quotes to notes from a speech to, how to get rid of deer that eat your plants, like whatever. Like, I just remember this list. And even when technology came about, he always used the index card. So I would watch him almost govern his life by lists. He was a quiet community leader. He was extremely introverted, but he was effective. And so I started building lists around these things and areas where I needed to learn. And then I started just publishing them. And people started writing in, like, number 5, 6, and 9 really got me today. And so the practice of that has been life-giving on me. The pathway to healing is the permission to feel your feelings so that you can modulate them and not get distracted by them when it's time to do the work. So I really started using it as a healing space, and it just got caught on. So I write a list every day. I don't publish them every day, but I write them every day as a way to, like, center myself on. And sometimes it's a hodgepodge of, like, what I need to get done and what I really want to say. And what I found is it's been an amazing tool to help me center, stay consistent, and pragmatic about my work. And it's been life-giving. So I wrote a book about all my lists. And I continue to do that practice every day.
Got it. So, okay. So I'm curious, and if I remember correctly, In the lesson of list, I believe you spoke about the importance of rest as a form of resistance.
100%.
Right now, how do you incorporate that philosophy into Six Square in your personal life?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done. and I've learned it's not even popular. Like,
okay.
It's like not popular. Like, we wear busy as a badge of honor. Like like if I walked in here tonight and I was like, hey, what are you up to? And you're like, I took a nap today. I'd be like, loser. Like, we don't even honor, instead of saying good for you. Because when you're rested, you're more creative. When you're rested, you do better work. When you're rested, you make better decisions. And so I've had to really wrangle it and take it on. I got sick a couple years ago, and I'm sitting in the hospital with a hole in my neck, thyroid cancer. And I'm like, this is not, like, is it going to go down like this? Like, this is not it. So I've been actively working on, like, the beauty of rest and what that looks like. Because I usually have a 4 a.m. start time every day.
Ooh, okay.
And what I was messing up, though, is it doesn't matter if your end time is 1 a.m. You're not doing it, right? And so I had to really get sensitive about, like, I got to lay down. My body needs to regenerate itself.
Yeah.
And so I use it as a form of resistance because I challenge people around me. I'm like, sit down. Or is that your assignment to do? Or why'd you volunteer for that? And that's come from a lot of over-indexing my assignments.
Okay.
Like, not every assignment is mine to take.
Right.
And so part of the resistance has been saying no and being okay with it. People disagreeing with me and being okay with it, and sticking to that.
Gotcha. So, okay. So kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, let's talk work-life balance, right? So with that said, how do you balance the demands of activism and leadership, like with the need for, your personal well-being? I know you have personal relationships. I know you have your children, you have family. How do you balance that with all of the work that you do?
So work-life balance is a myth.
Okay.
It's crap. And anybody that is trying to do that is already performing, and it's probably stressful and anxiety ridden.
Got it.
And the reason why I say that is, and I'm about 9 years in on this lesson. So why I say that is, nobody wakes up and it's like, okay, I'm going to do I'm going to do a third of this, a third of this, a third of this. Nobody's life looks like that, right? Like, it's just not even real. You wake up, you get ready to do something, you realize something else comes up, whatever. Even if you're going to work every day and doing work, your work life doesn't look like that. So I think the biggest thing that was sold to us is that there is such thing as work-life balance. So I gave that up because it was stressing me out.
Okay.
And I picked up work-life integration. And work-life integration looks like, I need to see what I need to get done in front of me, and I need to prioritize what those things are. And not everything is a non-negotiable. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that in this life, I'm honest about what that looks like, right? What integration looks like. And some days I'm 60% CEO and 40% mom.
Got it.
Some days I'm 50% CEO, 20% wife, right? And so when I started adding that idea into my household, it changed my life. And my kids were in here right now. This is the process. They wake up, good morning, because I'm already up. Mom, what's up? I was like 80-20, 80-20. If I say 20% mom, they magically run off and make their own sandwiches and get themselves dressed.
They already know what's up.
If I say, you know what, I was working on a grant and I've been 100% CEO, but today I'm 100% mom, I got you. Okay. Pancakes appear. I'm dropping, spreads of food, right? Yeah. You got me 100% today. But when I started being honest about that, it took the pressure off. Work-life balance is crap.
I like that.
Work-life integration says, I'm going to be honest. I even say to my team, like, what you got today? They're like, I'm tired. I'm not really fired. Anybody on my team will tell you if they're honest. Some days they come to, they're like, I'm not feeling it today. I'm like, take the L. Like, sit down.
Okay.
Like Jalen comes, he's like, hey, I'm like, you know what? You had a show last night. See you on Wednesday. Like, it's not even real to act like people are going to show up balanced. Nobody shows up balanced. That's why people are stressed all the time. It's like, I'm not going to be balanced today because there's no such thing. Yeah. But I'm going to work-life integrate the best I can.
Got it. Understood. Okay. So, looking back on your career with Six Square and your broader work in Austin, what are you most proud of? If you can pinpoint it to any one thing.
What am I most proud of? I think over time, what I think that I'm most proud of, and I probably don't talk about enough because there are no awards for this, but there's no recognition of this, is I really have embraced the idea that whatever work needs to be done, I'm willing to do it. Like I have gotten so disenchanted with titles and all that, and I'm more about like, what do we need to move? What needs to happen? What needs to be done? And I think I'm most proud of like, Pam, we need help getting a permit. Okay, hold up, Pam, our electricity got cut off. We're 2 hours before showtime. Wait, what? Let me get on that. Pam, can we get a structural engineer? And so I think that's the ways in which we function. Like, we need to close in on some money. Who can we call? Or how do we best lift this? So I think in the aggregate, it's been the bob and weaving, block and tackling, not allowing for misinformation to flow, shutting down misinformation, and showing up in the ways that I can with the toolkit I have that's helpful. I don't know if it's one thing. I think the body of work has been uplift, support, get out of the way, and connect.
Got it. Okay. So, kind of piggybacking off that, I know we've talked about a little bit of self-reflection. Let's shift gears and talk about the future, right? So I know you have hopes for Six Square, hopes for, the East Austin community as a whole. What in your mind, in your mind's eye, what does the future look like 5 years from now? What does it look like for Six Square to you? 10 years from now, what does East Austin look like to you? Kind of expound on that a little bit.
I think we're on the right trajectory. I get impatient.
Okay.
Often I've had to really work. I get impatient. I'm like, really? What are we talking about? After your 500th speech about the disparity, we're not getting, why can't you just give over the money? I mean, I get in that space. But I think the future is a community that recognizes, the idea of it's not what we're called at the end of the day, it's what we answer to. And getting really deliberate about what we won't tolerate and how things need to be less about expectations and more about requirements. It should be required that artists, creatives, and entrepreneurs be paid. It should be required that we should not have to barter for our own spaces on the East Side where our ancestors built it. Right? It should be required that people should be able to actually thrive in their gifts and not have to worry about how to pay for it and how to produce it. Right? And standing in the gap of that. So to me, the future looks like access. The future looks like removing obstacles without a back kick and weaponizing it. And the future looks like an activism that marries really raw anger and hope. Right? Like on that trajectory. And that gentrification isn't even talked about anymore because we have reclaimed and taken back what is ours. And that we have co-created a future where our kids want to be part of this narrative.
Got it.
And we haven't had to ship ourselves to Killeen because the taxes are cheaper.
Oh,
and
man.
we haven't. I told people, I was like, they were like, well, you and Harlan are on the East Side. I said, we've been displaced twice. And right now, it's not even a possibility if you want to live in something bigger than 400 square feet where you're sharing a wall.
It's crazy.
So the future to me is those developments have mostly artists and creatives who have locked in affordable housing till they don't want it. That we have access, that every student that wants to go to HT, their tuition is paid for. Where we aren't asking people to preserve a cemetery and not build on top of our bodies. So that to me is the future. And I actually, the minute I give hope is give up hope, I need to walk away. I haven't given up hope on that. I wake up every day with that hope that we are going to get there and that we need to stop acting like it's not happening.
There we go. Okay, so I know we earlier in the interview, I know we talked about the younger generation coming up, right? What kind of advice would you give to, a young activist or community leader who is just, starting their journey? Like, okay, say for instance, if you were to meet a 20-year-old you, a 20-year-old Pamela Benson Owens, what would you say to her? What would you advise her to do?
The first advice I would say is whatever you thought it was, that's not it. So I spent a lot of energy churning on stuff that wasn't even important. I would say not everything you think you need to say.
Okay.
I would say it's not about managing projects, it's about managing your energy. Like the energy we spend on worry and doubt and things of that nature would not be worth it. So I would give that up.
Okay.
And then I would absolutely tell my younger self that the time is now, but it doesn't have to be all at the same time.
I like that.
Right? So I've thought about that a lot because I look back on the time I wasted. I'm like, that wasn't even the thing to be worried about. And so how do I, how do you help? Oh, this is the other thing. Don't give it all away.
Okay.
Because I see a lot of young people, getting this bait and switch of like, come into the space and we'll let you do this and, you'll be around influencers and they give it all away and then somebody stole your idea and it's on a billboard somewhere. So, I'm like,
quick.
Oh, you gave too much away. And so I would say that too. I would be so eager
to
be in the space. I would just be like, and then we could do this. And then I'm like, they stole my idea.
Right.
So I would definitely say that to my younger self.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, let me say this too.
Okay.
Activism isn't always loud.
Gotcha. There we go. A bar. I like that.
It's not always loud.
I like that. Okay. Okay. Well, I know we did our Q&A. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's do some rapid fire this or that questions. We're gonna hit you with a few. Of course, you decide which one, and then you also give us the reason why you made the choice that you made.
Do I need to stretch out for this? Or?
I mean, no, we're not gonna get too crazy.
Okay.
Okay. Well, okay. Let's go ahead and get to it. Okay. Number one, history or the future.
Future. History informs us. Future, the future builds us.
I like that. Okay. Let's go. Community event or a quiet evening.
Quiet evening.
Okay.
Because I do a lot of community events that don't have the next step. So we feed them one night, but they can't eat the next day. So quiet for me, I think smaller, more intimate, deeper. I think we do a lot of surface. So for me, quiet evening at home, deeper, couple people really solving problems around the table.
Got it. Okay, see, next one we got East Austin's music or East Austin's food.
No.
This was a tough one for me too. When I did it, I was like, ooh.
East Austin's music, East Austin's food. Ooh,
now, we usually get somebody at least once every time we do this. So, this might be a one.
This is so messed up because I'm a foodie. So I'm sweating. I'm going to say the food because the food has a melody.
Got it. Oh, I like that. Okay. It kind of resonates. Okay, I like that.
I can't. That was messed up. That was messed up. That one was messed up. I was like, oh, ouch. Body blow. No.
Okay, let's see. Leading from the front or leading from the back of the crowd?
I have now had to experience both. I'm a lead from the back.
Okay.
That doesn't always get respected. People think just because you didn't name it, you're not doing it. I've been in the lead in the front, and we eat our young in the city. I don't enjoy it. I can do both, but I prefer to lead from the back. It's not about credit to me at all. I don't care about it.
Got it.
Usually those who are seeking credit aren't doing anything.
Yeah. Okay, morning reflection or an evening debrief?
I'm a morning reflection. For sure. I'm up at 4. When my house is quiet, I'm doing my best work at 4.
Okay.
Because I cut off about I got nothing left to give at 3, 4.
Okay.
But I'm married to somebody that's a nighttime reflector.
Night owl. Okay.
So I learn a lot in that space, but I'm a morning reflector for sure. My best work, my best brain, early morning.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Written word or spoken word?
Written word.
Okay.
Because there's something to leave behind. I don't write books for myself. I write books so my kids have something. I'm building a world for them that I won't be in. So for me, the written word, I journal a lot, is that they will have something to look at.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Mentoring others or continuing your own education?
I'm at a critical impasse where I
Okay.
need to mentor others and hand it off. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that. And I think we are in dire need of more of that.
True.
Dire need.
Indeed. Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay, let's go historical preservation or cultural innovation.
Innovation. It's the only way. It's the pathway to survival. I hate that because that's an either or question, but it's both. But for me, we gotta look forward and figure out what that looks like and how to tell the story.
Understood. Okay, I like that. Okay, let's see. Next one, we got the city of Austin or the nature of Austin. Hey, I'm hitting you with some body blows right now. It's some tough ones.
The history of Austin, the nature of Austin. History of Austin.
Okay.
It's getting lost. It is my job, and there are not enough of us doing the work.
Got it. Okay. There
That
we go.
was rough.
Hey, that's the point. We
Hurt my soul.
Now I think this might be a tough one based off of what I'm seeing so far. Let's go reading a book or writing a book.
Reading a book.
Okay.
All day, every day. I wish everybody would go through the process of writing a book, but reading a book is my escapism.
Got it.
Everybody knows. They're like, how do you have time to read all this? I read every day. I just read a book last night.
Okay.
Like, I read a lot.
Yeah.
I believe it is my opportunity to escape.
I like that. I hear that. Okay. All right. Good. So now we've run through our this or that our rapid fire segment. We're gonna go ahead and hit you with the final question of the night. I know we talked about this beforehand. So this question, we hit every guest that comes up on the 2-hour lunch break with the same question. Now, you got a chance to be on the show, had good conversation, good vibes, all of that. Now, with that said, who do you think will be a good guest on the show for the future? Now, but before you answer that, this has to be somebody that's in your contacts and your Rolodex that you can reach out. You can reach out to them and be like, hey, I pulled up on the 2-hour lunch break podcast. I had an amazing time. You guys need to, come on and talk to them. Who would that person or people be?
I've thought a lot about this because you're like, you have to be able to, know who they are and pull them up and talk to them. I have had an extraordinary couple of years of learning. And so the person that I would recommend to be on the podcast is Terry P. Mitchell.
Okay.
She's my co-chair for the Black Fund. She's a serial entrepreneur. We have a generational difference between us, and we've had to co-lead together. And the learning that's come from that has been significant.
Okay.
She's born and raised native Austinite, and she has a very unique story, and she lifts her gifts every day to support this community and has really felt the weight of that responsibility. I think that would be a killer podcast episode. She's brutally honest. And she's gifted.
Got it. I like that. I'm gonna break the fourth wall, Miss Mitchell. We need to lock in. We need to set that up. Just in the future.
Yes, she would be. You want to hear from her. I have learned a lot from her. We have modeled what it looks like to have very clarifying, courageous conversations and remain in community.
Got it. I like that. Okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah, she's great.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, let's go ahead and plug your social media handles. Where can everybody find you, and where can everybody find Six Square?
Pamela Benson Owens, 6 Square ATX is our Instagram feed. Pamela Benson Owens, all three names. On any of those platforms, you can find me. Check out 6 Square. We're getting ready. We're doing a redesign on our website right now. We're really focusing on what the future looks like for us. We've recognized that we're so busy doing the work, we don't always talk about the work. We want projects like this to thrive and be able to just be creative. So check us out there, and you can check me out. I'm usually connected to that, doing something. And yeah, come be around us, and if there's something we can do to remove an obstacle, reach out.
Got it. You heard her. She said reach out.
Reach out.
All right.
Easy to find.
There we go. All right. Well, that wraps up this edition of the 2-hour lunch break podcast. Once again, shout out to Miss Benson Owens for taking the time, to hang out. Had some good conversation. Shout out to our production behind the boards. You can find them at Cafe Yodo on Instagram. Salute to our home studio, Dawa Studios, East Austin, Texas. Episodes of the 2 Hour Lunch Break podcast are streaming on all platforms. You can find us on Instagram at 2HLB Pod and on X at the 2 Hour Lunch. Thank you for tuning in. We out.
And it's coming home to Texas. It's coming home all the way to Austin, Texas, baby.